Hello. Welcome to Record Time. As always, I'm happy to be here with you. Today, I have an interesting, a sort of unusual kind of question to explore in the records today. I think sometimes when we're in the middle of transformation or rebirth or an evolution of sorts, it can feel very tumultuous in those in-between liminal phases where you're leaving one version of yourself behind, but you're not quite in the new one yet. And those in-between phases can be really uncomfortable, almost excruciatingly uncomfortable. And so the question I want to explore today in the records is how do we be in that in-between? How do we exist in the chaos of evolution? So that's what I'm going to ask. I have the Akashic Records open. And maybe this question feels irrelevant to you right now. And if it doesn't really resonate, that's okay. But if ever you find yourself in a position of in-between, you'll know that this is here for you. Maybe it will serve you later on at another point in time. But yeah, let's see what they have to say. So I'm asking them, how do we just be? How do we be in that chaotic evolution, in the middle of that? And they're like, it's like sitting in the eye of the storm when you're in the middle of evolution and it's uncomfortable. It's like sitting in the eye of the storm. And they're saying that's actually how you cope with it. Because they're saying come to the eye of the storm and sit in it instead of getting caught up in the storm. So if you think, they're showing me like a tornado or a hurricane, any kind of vortex, any kind of spinning type of chaotic energy on the outside. So in the epicenter of those things, people are like, oh, it's the eye of the storm. It's the eye of the storm. They like, at least as a kid, that's what I heard. It's like the eye of the storm is like the worst part of the storm. It's like the scariest part. It's right in the middle. And they're like, exercise caution when you're in the eye of the storm. And just be aware of what it is. I'm like thinking of like movies and TV shows I used to watch where people would talk about the eye of the storm. And they're saying actually the eye of the storm is where you want to be. Because when something is spinning in the center and then out there, if something is spinning, the farther away you are from the center, the faster you're spinning, the more chaotic the thing is. And when you come closer to the center, the slower it's spinning. It's like, I'm like trying to think about that. I'm like, yeah, that feels correct, because it's like, yeah, I'm like remembering physics. So the farther out you are, the faster it's going, because it has a greater distance to cover in the same amount of time. But the closer you are to the center, it's like basically standing still. Nothing's happening in the center. So they're saying when you're in that like chaotic whirlwind of evolution, right? It feels like a storm is happening around you. There's so much energy that like comes up and out when you're in the middle of like a soul evolution. And they're like, it sounds dramatic, those words, soul evolution, sound dramatic, but really we all go through these very often, and sometimes more often than we realize. But when you're in those uncomfortable phases, it's important to acknowledge that you're in the middle of a storm and to actually seek the center, to come to the center, because that's where all stands still. That's where it's quiet. That's where you get the reprieve of the chaos, is in the center. So they're saying don't resist it and don't get caught up in the storm either. Come to the center and sit still. And that sounds very nice and poetic, but it's like, what the heck does that mean? How do you come to the center of a storm of soul evolution? What does that mean? It sounds so cryptic. So let's see if they can illuminate that further for us. Yeah, they're saying don't resist and don't judge yourself. So the way that like you can get whipped around in that storm is if you judge what's happening. If you judge the storm that's like raging around you. And it's like, imagine like that swirling stuff. It's like we've all been through these like soul evolutions where things just, all these emotions are coming up. So it's like that swirling energy is like the emotion that's coming up so it can come out. And so as those emotions come up, sit in the center and watch them spiral around and up and away, is what they're saying. But don't latch onto the emotion and then get whipped around by it. And don't, the way you latch onto the emotion is by judging it. So if you like know that you're in the middle of some kind of evolution or transformation of sorts, that's the key. It's like recognizing that you're in that evolution, and then when you see that these emotions are coming up, old patterns are coming up, you're getting triggered, or like things are upsetting you, things that usually don't upset you are suddenly upsetting you deeply, instead of getting upset and then also judging yourself for getting upset by those things that usually don't bother you anymore, just get upset, let it pass, like be with the emotion and then let it pass, and don't judge yourself for getting upset by it. That's what it means to be in the center. Because it's like if you latch on, if you start judging every emotion that you feel, you're just going to get whipped around by it, and it's going to feel very frenzied, and it's going to take much longer for that evolution to occur, and it's going to feel like havoc is being wrought. So it's like, just sit in the center and witness it. Just witness it. And another way that we can get caught up in that swirling chaos is if you overthink it. And I'm supremely guilty of this, overthinking. They're saying when a storm comes, right, we have like, if you know that a tornado is coming or a hurricane is coming, we have all these things, right? We have all this like advanced technology that can tell us where the storm is. They're tracking it. They know it's coming. They can tell you it's coming. But no matter how advanced the technology is, we don't have anything that can stop it. We know where the storm is, we know where it's going to hit, we know that it's coming and how strong it is. But even now, as advanced as technology is, there's nothing we can do to stop the hurricane from coming. So, being in the center of the storm is almost like bowing down to the power of the transformation itself. Bowing down to the fact that there's nothing you can do about it. And that sounds disempowering, but it's actually deeply liberating when you just realize that you don't have to put your hands on the wheel, you can take them off, because even if your hands are on the wheel, you're not controlling anything. The storm has to pass, it has to come so it can go. There isn't a way, it's not just going to dissipate without doing what it needs to do. It has to come. The energy has to come up and out. It has to swirl around. The storm has to happen for the evolution to occur. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And if you resist it, it'll just take longer. So they're saying don't resist the inevitable transformation of your soul. Remember that this is happening for you, not to you. And that no matter how much you think about it, no matter how much you prepare for it, no matter how much you try to plot and think and plan and reason with what's happening, you can't stop it from happening. So, recognizing that there's nothing that you need to do for the storm to occur. You don't have to do anything. The storm is it's like the evolution knows what to do. You don't need to help it. You don't need to help it. It's like the storm knows what to do. No one's telling the hurricane what to do. No one's telling your evolution what it needs to do. And when you try to overthink it and work with it and do too much, you're just slowing it down. And they're like, you're kidding yourself because you don't really control it anyway. There's nothing you can do. And so they're like, the best thing to do in these tumultuous moments of evolution is to just sit in the center, find your stillness, stick to the bare bones, right? Your practices that you already do. Yeah, stick to the structures that are strong. So if you have practices that you do every day, even when things are calm, stick to those. So that could be breath work or meditation or yoga or whatever it is that you do to anchor yourself on a daily basis. Stick to that and then don't overthink it after that. You don't have to add in extra things to weather the storm. Just stick to your same things you always do and find that stillness and recognize it's almost like coming to terms. To sit in the center, you have to come to terms with your own humility and your humanity, right? The humility to acknowledge that you overthinking it serves no purpose. No amount of thinking can control the storm. Nothing you do can control the storm. It has to pass. And the humanity of that, right? Being with your humanness, as evolved as we like to think we are, and as evolved as some people are, right? I know so many evolved people, but they go through this too. And it's like, even the most evolved people, they have to weather the storm sometimes. And at the end of the day, we're human. And just being with that instead of fighting it, being with your humanity, recognizing the humility that is required for transformation. Yeah, it's like just sitting And again, it's like, that's not to disempower anyone. They're saying the things that are in your control is whether or not you stick to your practices, stick to those structures you have in place, right? So it's like the storm is there, but you have the shelter of your daily practices. You have the shelter of meditation. You have the shelter of breath work. You have the shelter of whatever it is that you do on a daily basis to connect to yourself. That is what's protecting you and keeping you safe from the storm. So that's in your control, and everything else is out of your control. And again, yeah, it's like that should liberate you. That should comfort you. It's like a relief, like I don't have to do anything else. Doing my practice is enough. I don't need to worry about it. Just let it happen. Don't attach to the emotions. Don't identify with the chaos that's happening. The chaos, the storm that's occurring is temporary. It has nothing to do with you, really. It's like, it's an evolution of yourself, but it doesn't mean you're a good person or a bad person. And all that is coming up and out, and it's going away. And pieces of it may come back to you in new form. But really, as like one self is undoing and a new one is forming, the true self is what's left in that in-between state. So it's like we think that like the evolution of self is like an old self, one version of myself is dying and another one is taking place, but who you really are is the emptiness in between those versions. You are the eye of the storm, where the nothingness sits. That's who we are, always. We just get caught up in what's happening. These like swirling layers of identity and personality and likes and dislikes and our ideas of good and bad. But really, you are the nothingness in between the versions of yourself. I think this is a good spot to end for today. I'm going to see if they have anything else they want to add. I think it's complete. Thank you so much for listening. I know this one was a longer one today, so thank you for being with me for this whole time. And I'd love to hear from you if you have any thoughts about this, if this resonated with you, if you have any questions, if this brought something up for you. I'd love to hear from you, so please feel free to send me a message or connect with me. And until next time, I'm wishing you well. Namaste.